Hello, my friends and extended family. I had a couple days off there, but over the last 24 hours, I've gotten a couple books. So my Golden Dawn book came. Now, I know that's backwards to you folks. I don't know why it comes up that way, but it arrived in the mail thanks to one of my awesome viewers. And I also got Stop Walking on Eggshells, which is about borderline personality disorder. So um, I'm over the last few days have been delving a little bit more into that, and I've seen some other videos, and I mean there's so much to be had from studying psychology and studying personality disorders and these sort of things, at least in the Western culture and where I'm from in Canada here, because I think what I've come to in this is the same thing that actually it was Jordan Peterson had said, is that when you get to a certain degree of psychology and understanding of psychology, um, it becomes known that everyone is mentally ill, right? Society is creating a narrative and a scenario that oftentimes doesn't jive with nature, and thus we have this duality that's created and this striving for balance and turmoil, things coming to a head, etc., that we're seeing more and more of today. So, over the last few days, with a friend, I was discussing borderline personality disorder more, and it's important to really get to know your behaviors and be conscious of them, and to try and take them to an objective place, so that you're able to um, monitor yourself. So all that being said, I've got court tomorrow, so fingers crossed. It's tough going into the courtroom knowing that a lot of the policies and legislations behind what I'm up against are not designed to help me, uh, my family, or my situation. Right? It's really tough to realize that a lot of these things are created for the purpose of profit, and dysfunction is profitable. And I think at some point in our an empire or a society, I think it becomes known that dysfunction is going to create profit in a landfall sort of way. But I mean, once you start down that path, where do you stop? And if it becomes a habitual part of your society, well, I mean, it's a quick slope to hell. I mean, they do say that the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and I think a lot of things like adoption, like psychiatry, like these things start out with the best intention of helping people. Child maintenance, let's help single mothers, but ends up monetizing the problem. And when we put a price tag on something, we create more of that problem. And we see that with prohibition all the time and other things. So being aware of self is invaluable and important. It's a little tough. Ignorance is bliss, for sure. And certainly, it's tough to look at oneself and ask the hard questions. Am I a mentally ill, sick person? And I'll answer the question for you. Yes, you are. If you have not asked that question, self-diagnosed, and gone through the psychoanalysis process, then the answer most likely is yes. Okay, and there's always an exceptions and exceptions to that rule, but But ultimately, it's okay. We're all in this together, and we're all in the asylum together. And self-therapy, Gnosticism, sharing experience, sharing solutions is the answer to our problems. Paying someone exorbitant amounts of money to solve your problems will inevitably create more problems for you. And you can see how that works when you go into your doctor and he gives you a drug, and the list of side effects is pretty scary, and the side effects themselves tend to be worse than what you're going to see the doctor about, and chances are you do end up with some of these side effects that then sells another pill and another and another, and before you know it, you're going to have a tackle box full of pills, right? All the days of the week, 13 different pills a day. You have no clue at a certain point what you're shoving into your body. But I can tell you that, 90% of the population is drugged up to the gills. And, we all know it's a problem, but nobody wants to really look at it. Nobody wants to admit it. And reality is slipping farther and farther away from our grasps. So anyways, that's where we're at with that. What else is going on? The idea of talking more to people online is striking me as something I'd like to do. And I've got to get through court, and I've got to struggle through my stuff as well. But I realized in trudging through this path that I shouldn't really be having to struggle. I should be able to, narrow down simply what the problem is and access that information and see that there's a ready-to-use method to get through these problems, but there isn't. And certainly I don't have the $200 an hour to pay a psychologist to possibly help me or possibly string me along for as long as he can get that $200. Anyways, I feel good today. I had a nice 3-hour conversation with my good friend from Toronto, and he really can take the conversation, and he's got a lot to say, and I enjoy listening to what he has to say. And he thinks big dreamer, thinker, and at the same token, extremely intelligent. So quite often we can have conversations that I'm not going to have in my regular daily small talk with just regular interactions. So that's really a nice treat for me. So I am excited to break into these books. I'm excited to continue on with the borderline personality disorder. But through the conversation with the other person I was having, and their their own interest in diagnosing themselves and trying to overcome some of their behaviors and issues, what came up was the stigma that goes along with some of these diagnoses, right? So originally for myself, what the first psychiatrist had mentioned in his report, cluster B personality traits. And, I really got sidetracked on that and automatically jumped to the assumption that he was leaning towards narcissism. And when I looked at that, I didn't feel that necessarily was me. And when ADHD was brought up by someone at some point, well, I know what ADHD is. It's a hyperactive little kid running around all energetic and blah, blah, blah. Well, that's the part of the problem, is that we think we know what these things are, and they're sort of put forward and presented in society as one thing. But in reality, once you get behind the scenes and look at the DSM and actually study the behaviors and look at what they entail and encompass, you find something totally different. So for myself, I was very surprised to learn that ADHD included my hyperfocus, which I was starting to think was some kind of OCD. With borderline personality, there was a lot of things, behaviors in there that were me. Although I certainly didn't think of myself as the person from Fatal Attraction when Glenn Close went batshit crazy and started boiling bunnies and becoming fully psychotic and enraged. But um, there's degrees of these things. So whether or not I might be I'm high functioning. Usually throughout my life, the history has been that I've been high functioning. But the reasoning behind that was due to the fact that I medicated right from the time of a young age. When I got a hold of the medications, I latched on. Not to mention being raised in a smoking home. Although I was allergic, I mean, you build up a tolerance and you become addicted when you're sucking in secondhand smoke your whole life. So, I mean, needless to say, it continued on as if I had asthma, but it was the side product of me smoking that I couldn't breathe, right? It was inflaming my lungs. Um, so, ideally, when we look at our problems, we tend to run to the doctor, the psychiatrist, because they've been trained to deal with these things. And yet, my new experience in all of this is that there's no solutions there. And in fact, if anything, you'll just pick up another bad habit, i.e., Ventolin, so you can keep smoking, right? If you want solutions, and in talking to my friend, he had dealt with some epilepsy issues in his 10 some odd years ago and whatnot, and it was through doing his own research on dietary things and lifestyle that he had come up with a treatment program for himself that saved him cutting out a quarter of his brain, which was option A. So luckily, he took the initiative for himself and was hoping to avoid cutting out a quarter of his brain. Understandably so. So anyways, I think the point I'm trying to make here is that I want to encourage all of you to take an interest in yourselves, and on top of that, maybe adopt a new attitude, whereas there is solutions to your long-term problems. And you don't have to necessarily be under the impression that because you've been diagnosed with something that can be a lifelong disorder, disease, or whatnot, that you can't overcome it. And I want to open that up to you, that you can overcome some amazing, well, not amazing, some terrible disorders and diseases yourself, and it's possible. Just open up the door that anything is possible for you. And it's not in the best interests of the system itself to cure you, right? Treat the symptoms, no curing, right? That's the economic system we're involved in, and that we need this continuous money flow coming in. And any way we can get that, to keep that going, regardless of your wants, needs, health, that comes first. And that's the terrifying reality that we face living in an economic system. So hopefully this gives you some things to think about. And again, I mean, I haven't been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. Some of the psychiatrists have tippy-toed around some cluster B stuff. And I will admit to some of that. I've explored the narcissism aspect myself. It doesn't fit. Um, it can fit if someone first meets me and we have a battle of intellects, um, because I get frustrated with people, and I lose patience. But anyways, I mean, all that aside, I did look at it. Absolutely, and I was open to it. I was open to psychopathy, sociopathy. All I wanted was a solution to my problem so that I could have better relationships. I could have less depression. I could manage my emotions better. Because although my emotions are a whirlwind inside me, um, because of circumstance and development, I am able to hide that. And that has become a detriment to me. So, i.e., when someone's manic and losing their shit, well, something is wrong with them. But if the person is exhibiting none of those signs, well, it's hard to see that there's anything wrong at all. And that's something I've been trying to cope with and overcome myself, in that, I don't want to have to go out and kill a guy to get treatment. And I almost did that in my younger days with the pedophile. I put a guy in the hospital, and I had been seeking help, trying to get help prior to that. And that's where it led, because the emotions eventually were going to explode and come out. So our system is very sick in and of itself. And like J. Krishnamurti once said, it's no sign of health to be well adjusted to a sick society. And unfortunately, all signs point to the fact that we live in a very sick society, unless you think that toxic consumerism, sucking back chemicals and poisons, obesity, uh, every personality disorder on the sun, atheism, lack of moral morality, lack of moral education. Unless you think these things are a sign of progress, well, personally, I do not. And, you know, the proof, I think, is in the pudding. And I mean, anyone can sit with something for a certain amount of time, or things I say, and ponder on them, and I think they would come to at least some sort of compromise and agreement. So anyways, that's what I wanted to talk about today. And there was a ton of other stuff, and I've totally forgotten. Well, there's the ADHD, hey. When I'm on the spot, I forget the stuff that I had. But we'll talk again soon, hopefully. And again, tomorrow morning, I will be going through my thing. I don't think I'll talk to you before then, but I'll let you know how it goes. And if there are those of you who pray or have your spiritual practices, please include me in those for tomorrow, for the best hopes and the best outcome for myself and everyone involved. So I'm just going to cross my fingers that the courts will simply follow the law and their legislation in this particular instance, and not decide to forego that and attempt to destroy me again with their unrealistic expectations of someone struggling with the system, this toxic system he finds himself in. So, thanks again, everyone. I love you. You're the best, and we'll talk soon.